There we go.
Good morning, Rabbi Zajac.
Good morning, good morning, good morning.
Good morning, Rabbi. Good morning, Chavra.
Good morning.
Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's three prakim. Rambam, Hilchos, Tumas, Meis, Prakim, Vav, Zayin, and Ches, beginning with Perek Vav. Perek Vav is going to begin by telling us items that are not Mekabel Tumah, the big rule that anything or everything that comes from the sea is Tahar. We're going to learn also Klei Gelalim, Klei Avanim, Klei Adama, Klei Eitz HaSelinachas, as we'll explain, not Mekabel Tumah. A Klei Cheres, a earthenware utensil, can only acquire Tumah if the source of Tumah goes inside its airspace, never from the outside. On the other hand, when the source goes into the airspace, it doesn't have to touch the inner part of the keli. It simply only has to enter the inner part of the keli, and it will already impart Tumah. And we're going to conclude the 6th chapter with more details about a kaver and about the goylel and the doifik, as we learned already. And as we will see that a kaver, just to remember, a grave is metama b'maga u'ba'oihel, and it imparts Tumah mido'iraisa. The goylel, the doifik, is also going to impart Tumah, also b'mago u'ba'oil, but only midrabanan. And we're going to continue to learn the sugya of kever also in the next chapter. But let us start, Chevrim. Perek Shishi has 9 halachas, beginning with halacha Aleph. Atzmais hadog va'oiroi. If you have anything that's made out of the bones of a fish, the skin of the fish, ha'oisa mehem kelim, einon mekablim tuma klal. It's a gavaldik rule. And not only are they not susceptible, and therefore they will not become tamig on a biblical level, not even on a rabbinic level. And it's not only about fish. The green moss that appears on the surface of the water, anything that comes from the sea, everything that comes from the waters is tahar, because it itself has a din of mayim. And therefore, if a person makes a tent, a covering from the skin of the fish, again, other types of moss that are growing in the sea, the tent itself will not become tummy, even though it will be able to impart tumah. If you have a mace under an oil, even if the oil is made out of fish skin, all people, kalim, oichlin, mashkin, that are under the same skin will become tummy. Guys, very much like building is not mekabel tumah. Nevertheless, that's the whole din of an oil, that when you have a roof, like the roof right now on top of our heads, it's part of the building. It's not mekabel tumah, but it does allow for the tumah to spread to everything that's under the same oil. Same thing will be with any product of that which comes from the sea. Halacha beis. Now let's go. Klei gelalim, it's very unusual. I know it's weird when you hear it the first time. They used to make kalim out of the dung of animals. Probably it got hardened. It was hard for them to get kalim. But anyway, such a kalim. Kalim that are made out of stone. Kleilim that are made out of earth. Now it's important to differentiate. Klei cheres, I know, is also made out of earth. But a klei cheres was put into a kiln and it was really hardened there. That's a different category. We're speaking about an earthen keli. The earth was hardened together. It was not burned in that furnace. The stama, you can't use it for liquids, but still, keli made out of adama. Also, einam mekablam tuma, limedivrei Torah, limedivrei seifrim. And it doesn't matter what the source of tuma is, being tumas meis, being shara tumas. Another category, chol kli eitz ha'oselinachas, any wood utensil, but that was made to be stationary. Why? What's made to be stationary? Because they're very large. Kigoin, a teva, a migdal, a kaveres, a chest, a cabinet, a container that is shaped like a beehive. the point is Shehei Machzik and Arboim Sobelach, that they are so large that they are able to contain in them the quantity of 40 saw of liquid, and more than that, the Yelehem Shalayim, and they have a base because it can be very large, but if it's made pointy, so it's always going to be at least moving from side to side. But if it's something that could be stationary, Einon Mekablim Tuma Klau, it's as if it's built into a building. And they are referred to when we're going to have in Mishnayos or later in the Rambam, Klei Eitz Habab Mida. Klei Eitz Habab Mida means things that are very large. Wooden utensils that are very large are not Mekabel. Another rule, Halachi Gimel, Klei Eitz, any keli that's made out of wood, Pishuteyem, if they are flat, it's called Pshute Klei Eitz, they are Tohirim. Unlike metalware, even like a knife, it's Mekabel Tuma, right? It's something that was made for a purpose, even though it's flat. Not so by wood. However, Mekabel even if it's made out of wood, if it has a receptacle, it has a keli, there's a base kibble, then yes, Tameim doesn't mean they are Tameim. It means that they are susceptible. If they have contact with the source of Tumah, they become Tameim. Klei Cheres, earthenware, also Shuteyem Tohirim, flat earthenware are Tohir, and only when they have a base kibble, Umekableim Tameim. However, there's another detail in which Klei Cheres is different even from the Klei Eitz. They can only acquire Tumah if the source of Tumah goes into their airspace, or if a Zav moves it. Now, guys, if this is a Klei Cheres, just to explain, if a Zav moves it, he's also moving the airspace inside of it. So it's not an exception. It's another way where the source of Tumah goes inside of it, because all of it is moving. Even if the Klei Cheres was brought to a corpse itself, the highest level, the highest source of Tumah, but it only has contact from the outside, it will not become Tameh. On the other hand, when the source goes inside of it, there were machmer that even if it doesn't physically touch it, also nitman. All right, gavaldik. Now, so then nitma, if the Klei Cheres is not sealed, so yeah, because again, it's under the oil, the airspace inside the keli is also under the oil. But if it had a cover that was tightly fastened to the top of it, then who? And remains starred. As explicitly written in the Torah, Tumah can only enter the Klei Cheres, only from its opening. And like we mentioned, and ubeheset hazov, when the zav moves it, because it's not an exception. It's because when you move something, it's as if you have contact with all of it, not only the outer part of it, because you're moving all of it, also with the inner part of it. Halacha dalet. Now, quickly going back, the kever, like we mentioned, the grave itself is metame bemaga uba oil. Grave is something that's affixed to the ground. Goylal and doifik, the way that I'm interpreted, is that many times when someone was passed away, they would cover that person with utensils, with items that are not affixed. The sides of it is called doifik, the top is called a goylal. Goylal is also metame, also bemaga uba oil, but only midrabana. Okay, so now let's begin. If you made this cover from something, from the items we mentioned above, we said klei avonim is not mekabel tumah, or klei adamam, or this very large wooden oversized utensil that has a base, or klei tzababimidam, or klei cheres that's right now completely closed. That means nothing has access to the inside of it. Guys, listen to this. If you touch this goylol now, Tomei Tuma Shiva, you become Tomei. In the higher Tuma, you need now 7 days to become pure because you touched a goylol. In other words, it's not shot that the item became Tomei. No, the item is not Tomei, but you touched a goylol. And a goylol is metame. And therefore, if you removed it from the top of it being a covering for the mace, or you didn't move the goylel, you removed the mace from underneath it, so now it's tahidin. Amazing. If you would have used, let's say, a metal type of keli to cover a mace, first of all, when you touch it, you become tumas shiva. I got that. But when you remove it, that metal utensil continues to be a nav. And as we learned yesterday, halal cherev, if it had contact with the mace, it's going to be metama you also for 7 days. This taka won't become tummy. But tumas goylel, which is connected to tumas keved, is not about whether it itself is tummy. It's about it being able to impart tuma. Amazing. Now we also learned that living creatures, living beings other than a yid, at least midoiraisa, is never going to become tummy and therefore can never impart tuma. So if you use the living animal to be a cover of a mace, same thing, while it serves as the goylel, and again, hit it at the moment you untie the animal from it being stuck there on top of the mace. Now, like we learned in Allah Dalit, it did not become tummy. Amazing. If you have a earthenware utensil that's filled with liquid, but it was covered. It was tightly fastened. And also, same rules. So while it functions as a goylel hanageh tummy to mashiva, and at the same time, the liquid and the mashkin are tahidin, because the liquid is not the goylel. The liquid is inside the klecheres. The klecheres itself is not tamei, so therefore nothing in it will become tamei as well. Halacha hey. Koydem a beam sha'asa goylel lekever bein oimedes. So guys, let's say this is a beam. Oimedes means that you have it standing up, which means you are using the width to be the cover. You're using the width to be the cover to the mace that's underneath it. So when, let's go into more details of this goylel, what part of this covering is a goylel? That which is covering the opening, which is underneath it. In other words, if there is an overlap, if it goes beyond the opening of the ground or beyond the maze, it's not always going to be considered the goylel. And therefore, if you touch the part of it that's beyond the grave, then you're going to be tar.
Do we have anything else that becomes partially tuma like this? I mean,
well, Kevin, good point. And the answer is the Rambam introduced halacha hey after we learned the two previous halachas. And what did we learn there? That the goylel can be completely tar. That was the whole point. Now, there's something else. If something becomes tummy because it had contact with a mace, Kevin, then it's going to be metamayu based on the rules we learned yesterday. That's something else. We're learning about the power of a goylel midrabanan only, because it's not fixed, to be metama, whatever it had contact with, to mashiva. That is only the part that's over the mace. Asa roisha goylel lekever. Now, if you have a beam that is narrower in one side and wider in the other side, the narrower side is directly on top of the opening to the grave. The wider part goes, and therefore, when you go higher up, it's going beyond the opening of the cave, like a tree that has a trunk in the bottom. But then when you go up, it's very wide. Then, if you touch it within 4 handbreadths down of the cave, no matter what part, since the contact on the ground is within the kaved, so it goes up 4 tfachim, tamim mishum goylo. And the moment you go above 4 tfachim, since those parts now are high up and they are beyond both sides, tahar. When you plan to cut off the upper portions, So if you plan to leave it the way it is, the point is that since the part that's resting on the grave is within the grave, so then no matter how high up you go, all of it is a goylo. Just to give a heads up over here, I know we don't have this in the Chayenus, but if anyone here, Kevin, has a Rambam La'am, we're going to learn soon a few halachas where a picture, even though the pictures is not that great, will be very helpful to understand what the Rambam is saying. Halacha 6. If a person has 2 large stones, again, even though we established that the stone in itself is not tamei, but when it's functioning as a goylo, it's metama this rabbinic tumas goylo. Shason goylo. So while they are both over the grave, a person, and another thing, guys, we said that a goylo is metame not only by touch but also through oil. We also learned oil really means 3 things. It also means if I am over it, I am the oil to it, I become tummy. If a person goes over al gabishteim, guys, doesn't mean on top of both at the same time. No, it means on either one of the 2, you're tummy, because both of them is a goylo. But here's the gavaldikai. So guys, there's someone buried in the ground. Nothing was affixed. They put 2 slabs of stone on top of the grave. Now, if one of them was removed, listen. So now the grave is partially opened. You know what we say? Hamayil al gabishniya. Whoever goes on top of the one that's still there, wow, will remain tar. Well, isn't the goylo metame? Goylo is only metame when it fully covers the grave. Now that there is a mamash, an opening to the grave, so we say that the tumah goes out through the opening, and that's going to be a topic, my friends, that we're going to have in great detail in the next chapter. And that takes away the power for the one that's there to be metame as goylo. You have to remember that. Now, I want to say another very important detail, guys. Okay, I wish there were pictures for that. So someone was buried in the ground. They didn't affix anything as a covering, but they put 2 stabs of stone. Say that. And now one was removed. Whether you look down, the feet are exposed, the front are, it doesn't matter. So the tumah goes through the opening. So if you go over the stone that's covering, you're not tummy. Hold on. If I go over a corpse, I become tummy. Yechap. So the Rambam is speaking about the person going over part of the stone that's not directly over the mace. Because of course, if you go over the mace, you're tummy because you were mile ala mace. We're only speaking about this rabbinic law that the goylo itself imparts tumas oil. And on a rabbinic level, the person becomes tamei shiva. Okay, guy, I like the picture, even though it's good. Okay, weiter. Halacha zayin. Gar shal tzeroiros. Now, if as a goylo, again, someone was buried, and they covered the person with a mound of stones. Look, again, it's not a fix, it's a goylo. Now, what happened was, like, how many stones did they put? It depends how you look at it. They put a lot of stones. So we view the stones as being a row over a row over a row, like an onion. So we say only the bottom one, because only the bottom one was that which was needed to actually cover the cave. Then you're taught. Guys, don't forget, we're speaking about avonim. You have the beauty of this chapter. Avonim themselves are not tummy. They're not tummy. They don't impart tuma. You want for these stones to impart tuma because they are a goylo. So we say if nothing is fixed, only the lowest level is considered a goylo. Halacha 8. Halacha ches. Halacha 8. In other words, they put an aron inside a large stone. And v'niach by hameis, so you have a large stone. They carved out an opening. They put in there a casket. They put in there a mace, and then they cover it with a goyim. Says the Rambam, if you touch the rock from any side, you're tahar. It's only when you touch the cover are you tamei. Which again makes a lot of sense. Rocks by themselves are b'chlal, they're not susceptible to tumah. You want for them to impart tumah because of goylo, only that which is covering the top. That's filled with mason. The Evan Gedoyl Alpiyah, She'ein tamei ela keneged chalolom. Yavaldik. In other words, only the open space on the top is from where the tumah goes out, and whatever covers that has a din of a good. In banon nefesh al gabon. Here's where the pictures will be helpful. So the nefesh that we are talking about. So guys, there's like this mound, right? This rock. In there, someone was buried, and on top of the mound, they put up a nefesh, means a little, what we would call a matzeva. But it's really like a little building, something that's above it. And now we're going to learn about whether it's the way this smart, stupid phone is shaped, or whether the bottom part of it is wider and the top part is narrower, or if the top part is wider and the bottom part is narrower. Whoever has a Rambam La'am, he has these three pictures. This is not helpful. Now, take this out. Take this out. Take out the whole Salem over here. We don't need it. Okay, let's take out this picture. So we say, this will then have a din like a kever that is sealed from all sides. Now, guys, we're going to speak about this more in the next chapter. I don't mind speaking about it right now. When you bury a mace into something, if there's an opening, the tumah goes out through the opening. If in there you're going to have an empty space of a tefach by a tefach by a tefach, the tumah stays within the space. But if a person is buried, then there's no open, at least tefach by tefach by tefach, and there's a building on the person, he's just put in there, he's flush with whatever is around him. All of the structure has a din of a kever midoraisa if it's a building. And therefore, let's say if you touch the side of the kever, even though you are far away from the mace, you become tamei tumah shiva. If you're mahil on any part of the kever, you become tamei tumah shiva. So like this. Means that nefesh has a din of a kever sasum. But if the opening is wide in the bottom and narrow in the top, you need to see a picture of this. And so hanigeya milmaton, you'll be tahar, which by the way, like it's land, like karka oilam. Umil maila tamei. Why? Shariat stad mil maila somchol gabi ameis v'nasa kegoilo. But since it's tzara mil maila, so all of the top part of this structure is over the kever, so now it's going to have a din of a goilo. If this is the opposite, it's wide on the top and it gets narrow on the bottom. So then hanigeba b'chol makom will be tamei. Wow. The third scenario is if it's structured like this, which by the way, all of our, let's say even matzevas are structured. They're not, narrow on top and wide on the bottom. They're just a regular rectangular. So the din is if you touch it within the lowest tefach, you're tamei. I'm sorry. You touch it anywhere before you come to the lowest tefach. And we only consider the lowest tefach of this structure as karka, and karka is tar. Umitefach ulamata tar. Another thing. Nikav arain basela. In other words, a corpse was put vertically into the side of a mountain. You have a corpse standing. And the mace was put in there like a nail. Because karka oilam, but the opening, wherever the opening is, that is where you become tamei. And if there is a keli touching it on top of the opening, that has a din of a goylol. And final halacha 9, ma'ara, if you have a cave, shahakever b'toicha, that someone is buried in the cave, and there is a chatzid right in front of the cave. Very good. So like this. If the chatzir is not covered, whoever stands in the courtyard is tahar. And I want you to know, guys, that just to make a correction from yesterday, midrabanan, the Chazal said that anyone that stands 4 amas near a cave becomes tummy. We don't consider the chatzir to be dalad amas near the grave, because the grave is in the cave. You are in a courtyard that's opened. It's like a different environment. Ubilvad, that you should not even touch the mashkoif of the ma'ara. And that's something that we learned earlier on, that if you touch even the mashkoif, let's say of a house in which there is a mace, you become tummy. So the whole cave is like an oil. However, if this outer courtyard is roofed, so like this, if at least the area where the courtyard will touch the cave, that area is open, which makes it separated, then you're weiter tahor. But if it's completely covered all the way to the cave, or even if there's a little bit of an opening, but it's less than 4x4, now we say, anyone who enters that chaser becomes tamei. That's tumah of oil. We consider the entire chaser as an extension of the ma'ara. Okay, Atkan, Perik Shishi, and now we're moving on to Perik Shvi'i, and we're going to discuss the din of a kaver sasum. So whoever's joining us right now, just to make it clear again, aside of a mace giving off tumas oil, if there is a physical structure connected that's built around the mace, and there is no opening, there's no vacuum, there's no empty space between the mace and the inside of that structure, so they would pile stones on top of a mace, right? And they would affix it. So even though these stones are going beyond the location of the mace, all of it is a kaven, and a kaven midoy raisa is metama the maga uba oil. So if someone is going over any part of this kaven, even though they're not over the mace, they're going to become tummy. Now let me go further. If a mace is in a house, the mace has to be removed. The mace has to be removed. Let me add another detail. If this building has a din of a kaver sasum, if that were to be the case, then what happens? Think about it, guys. You have a building. There's a mace inside of it, and on the outer side of the building, there's a little bit of a roof. Many times, even now, when you go into a building, all the houses over here, they build something right in front of the door that if it rains, like when you come to the house, you shouldn't be under the rain. If you stand under that, you are also tamei, right? Because you are in the oil. Now, if a mace is in a home, and there are many ways through which the mace can exit. So we're going to learn moed dikadinim. There will be times that since we don't know through which exit, if you're standing outside this building, and if by every exit there's a little bit of a roof on the outer side, it's going to be metama all of them, because maybe the mace will be leaving there. However, if you intend machshava to take the mace out of door number 1, we'll see details inside, then taked, anything connected to door number 1 is going to be considered a kaver. And if you'll be under a roof, you're going to be tamei, but it's going to be metaher the other exits. So it's your intention where to take the mace out will be matzel the other psachim. And the Rambam will explicitly spell out what we're speaking, that the whole din of a kaver sasum is I take back, okay, we're going to learn details inside, that a kaver sasum is dafkin not when it's tumah tzutza. Okay, we're going to explain this when we learn the chapter inside. These are short chapters. We have time. We're going to learn it slowly because they're very foundational rules. The 7th chapter, Ashgacha, has 7 halachas. Halachah. Bayis sasum. If you have a closed structure and the mace is in it, Oy, Pesach, or if that house used to have a door, because people are going to ask, 1 second, what do you mean you have a house that's sealed? How did the mace get in there? So 1 second, mausoleums, people build buildings around Mason. There was a building, very good. That's a good, just some example. But over here, you see there's a door. So first of all, if you have a house that's sealed, and there is no exit, or there used to be an opening, but uparetz et spetsimov means, this is important. There's different ways of sealing a door. The halachic way of sealing a door, that there's no more door, is that you remove the door frame. Today we have different things. Today you would cover it with sheetrock. That's what it means. It means that it's mamish, not a door. The point is that the house is completely sealed. So I want to take back what I said in my intro about there not being the cholol. No, I don't care if the whole house is empty. Since there is a mace in a building of it and it's sealed, that entire house has a din of a caver, and therefore umitame kol svivav, which means, guys, if you touch any part of the house, touching it, you become tummy. And even more than that, if outside the building, let's say the roof of the building protrudes further beyond the walls, if you stand under any part of the oil, you become tummy. If you touch the backside of the house, you touch the roof of the house, Tamei Shiva, because it's like a kever sasum, okay? I don't care if the house is humongous, and I don't care if the whole house is empty. It's a very important correction. Fact that it's sealed, it has a din of a kever. Now, niftach by Pesach, if an opening has been created in it, even if the person then changed one's mind and they sealed that opening, but they did not seal it halachically, meaning they did not remove the door frame. They sealed it many doors today. You lock it, you double lock it, but you leave it. Then, no. If someone touches the outer part of the house, they're not under or amigaga, they're taught. But you know what? By that door, David, since the mace, there's a door, maybe the mace will be removed, even if it won't. The fact that it could be removed to the door, so we say that the tumah of inside the house goes beyond the door, not into the whole world. The key is, again, that by a door on the outer side of the building, if there is a little roof, if you stand under that, you'll become tamei.
Is there shear to the amount of the opening?
Yeah. There's a shear 4x4 tvachim, and if it's a kazais, it's 1x1 tefach. We're gonna have to soon inside that. But the ain Tommy Elikan I got a Pesach. Givaldi, guys, this is the din of a bias sasum, which has a din of a kever. The Kama Yeshar Pesach, how large does the opening have to be? So if the mace is shalem, so then the opening has to be 4 tfachim. If there's only a kazayis min mace, which by the way also gives off tuma, like we learned in the earlier chapters, bamaga, ubamaso, ubayim, then a tefach. Now you can fit a kazayis of it in less than a tefach. I know that. That's the shear. The gadol mikazayis. Now what was it? Mace shalom to a kazayis. What about all in between? Any amount of corpse that's larger than a kazayis has a din of a mace shalom, and our halacha that the tumah goes beyond the Pesach on the other side, if there is an oil, it also means if you touch the door. If you touch the door, if you're under the oil. Guys, that's it. You have to chab that. Once you chab that, you got now the whole basis of the chapter. Halacha beis. Hameis b'toich habayis. There's a mace. And you have many doors. So first of all, if there's many doors, if it's not a sealed home, so we said the tumah only goes where the door is. But there's many doors. So it's a gavaldic thing. The rationale behind everything we're going to be learning now. And by the way, many times in Gemara Bavli we quote these Mishnayos. We learned this together. Is that where do you intend to remove the mace will determine where the tumah is. If, as we'll see, if you're going to remove the mace through door number 1, that kavana, that intention, is mitaher door number 2. So if they are all nu'ulim, guys, we're not speaking about parats at psima. Then it's a whole different thing. That every part of the house is something the outside. No. You have door frames, but you locked it. So then kulam tameim. Why do we say kulam tameim? Because we have no idea if at any point in the future the mace is going to be removed. We don't know through which one. They're all equal. They're all equally sealed. So that's a chumrah. So we say it could be through any one.
These doors, meaning it cannot be ever.
No, it could be open. You just locked. No, it's David. If you would have sealed it, you would have removed the door frames, then it's much worse. Right. Then we say there are no doors, and every part of the outside of the house is tummy. Now that there's a door, the door really saves all the walls. It's only through the door area. Okay, but there's more than one door. So now let's go. If they're all locked, they're all tummy. And the Pesach mehem tachas atikra. Pesach, the Rambam explicitly speaks about what we said before. It's not only if you touch the outer side of the door. If there is a roof that's going over the exit, right, which is mamish normal, you will become tummy. However, if niftach echad mehem, if one of the doors were opened, or more, not even open, you had kavana to take them out through one of them. You had intent. Guys, we're not speaking about sealed. We're not speaking about locked. They're closed. And now you have in mind, I'm going to take it out through door number 8. Even though you only made that decision after that person passed away. And more than that, what happens if you intend to take him out of the window for whatever reason, which is unusual? As long as the window has this minimum shear, or I'll add a detail of it, if the kazayis, if it's only a kazayis min amaze, even if the window's only a tefach by a tefach, your machshava is hitzela al psachim kulam. And therefore, ve'ein tamei ella keneged pesach sheniftach, right? That's the first case. Or even if you didn't actually open it, if you only had in mind to open it, and all of the other doors going forward are tohayim. Ve'pnei shehem ne'ulim. Now, the point is again, if those doors would have been open, we wouldn't have said it. If those doors would have been open, then the tumah goes out. And that's Machala rule today. Forget about Bayasos. If there's a mace in a room, and in a building, in a hospital, a place, if all of the doors are closed, all the windows are closed, at that time, the tumah remains in the room. But the moment the door is open, Pasha, the tumah goes out. If you had the bias, that's sasum, there was no exit, and you began to create an opening to remove the maze. So the halacha is that misha yachtar arbal, even if there were other doors, if you are making another exit, the moment that exit has this shear, so now the mace will be removed only from your new opening, and all of the other doors on the other sides are now going to become tohoidim.
It doesn't have to be a designated window or door.
You have to designate it now.
Meaning, okay, yeah.
You have to designate. Very good. Pesach sasum. If there was a door that was closed, and vehischil paschai. So interestingly, here, kavanah is not enough. You have to begin to open it. I'll tell you why. Because before we were learning about doors that were nu'ulim. Here they're not nu'ulim. They're just closed. If they're just closed, they're not even locked. It's so easy for you to take it out of that door. Just open it. So here you have to actually begin to open A to be matzal the others. There are many windows, and the kulam bekufais, they are all closed. So the din is kulam tohaidim, kulam tohaidim. Why is that? Because since it's not the derech to remove a mace through a window, we go with the principle that the tumah is not going to go out from there. But if niftachu, if the windows are opened, then the tumah goes out through there. And that's the rule. And if you are on the other side of the window and there's a little bit of a, cover over that window, so when it rains, it shouldn't come into the house. So you're under that, you're tamei. Kulam tameyos. But it's not shat tameyos, and the doors are good. The doors are also problematic. So it's when the window is open, it's not that the mace is going to be leaving through there. When the window is open, the tumah goes out through it.
If you're concerned about the tumah coming out of the doors of the windows,
yep.
Why do you care about the walls, the rest of the walls?
So the answer is, that's the good to chazar is, that if you have a mace babayis, and there's the open house, and it's not the way I said in the intro, it's an open house. If there is no halachic way of you removing the mace, because not only there are no doors, there's no door frames, we say the whole house is like a cave.
If there are doors,
Well, that changes everything. If there's nothing, then everything is tummy. If you touch any part of the outside of the house, you're tummy. If there is a protrusion outside the house, anywhere, you're tummy. If you have doors, David, the doors save the walls. But if you don't know which door, then behind every door there's tuma. And once you determine through which door you're going to remove, then only that door has tuma. It makes sense, these halachas. It's easy to remember, but everything is rational. Now, Pesach, guys, we're in the middle of base. Pesach, right, cotton. That's where we're up to. Pesach, cotton, Pesach, Gadol, there's a machlokes how to learn pshat. One way how to learn pshat over here is, many people have it right now. If you have, let's say on your property, normally people have it going in from the yard to the street. They have the big gate. That when they drive in, they have to open the gate. But they don't always drive in. In that gate, there is another door for people to walk through. Okay? And let's say there's a little roof that goes beyond all of the big gate. So the din is, Hamayel al gabi shneim tamei. So it's by default, again, when there's a house. And that's the exit, that's the door. So this halacha, that the tumah goes to everywhere where the door is, goes even to the larger gate, to the larger opening. But if you have in mind, let's see a bekatan, we consider that as another door, which is matayir and matzal the others. Tirakatan as agadol. And that's bachlal. Double doors. Double doors are common noise. You have double doors. So we say, if there's an opening, the walls of the house are tall. It's not a kever sasum. But the doors, which doors? Both, same idea. And if you have in mind to take the mace out of one of the two doors, same thing. Then hamayel al gaba shneim. Very good. If you were under the protrusion that goes over any one of the two, that's any one, you're tummy. But if even though you can argue, so what, you can change your mind. No, I won't change my mind. I'm going to take it out of the one to the right, not the one to the left. Then, tiras chaveiroi. Weiter, hoyalabais pesach echal sofim. Pesach echal dorim, again, as long as you have these psachim, you're good. The Pesach saves the house from becoming like a kever sasum. So one in the north, one in the south. You had in mind to take it out in the northern opening, a northern wall. But then someone who's a relative, and they say, no, so the din is, tiar d'roimin es hatzafayni. Now, this is important. Why? Because the relative, the brother's machshava is more important than your machshava. It's time to know, if you have two people, it can mamash happen now. In other words, you have a mace in the room. A person passed away in their home. We're tummy anyways. We don't think about this. The Chevra Kadisha comes and there's two ways to exit. One guy has a mind to take it out from that door. The other one has a mind to the other door. One doesn't have the right to be mevatel the machshav of the other. I would argue that maybe both doors are tummy, the other ones are not. But one over the other. But since it's a karayv, the machshava of the karayv trumps the machshava of the non-karayv. However, when it comes to all of these machshavas, don't do harama. In other words, there's someone who wants to stand on that side. Oh, I'm going to take out the mace from here, even though I never really meant it. And then I'm going to change my mind when it's convenient. No. You have to determine how are you going to take the mace out. And yeah, that machshava, limits the tumah to one area. And the im harim, and only God knows that, then it doesn't help. Then they're both tumah. Beautiful. Halachigim. Batim absucham lachsad. So here again, guys, like in a hospital, if a mace is in one room, guys, and the bias opens up to some sort of patio. Let me tell you better. There's like a center patio, and many bottom open up to it. Someone has to make pictures for us. I'm saying it's simple. It's
like a home with 3 bedrooms.
You can say that, but it's not so because some details is dafka because it's a patio. We'll see in a second. Now, Hames is in one of the homes. Many homes open up to the bottom. Im hoya darkoi shel meis lotzeis bechotzer. That's the way people normally would remove the mace. So harei ha-beishar. Now, why the Rambam says beishar? It's hard to get confused, guys. Beishar means the achsadra. So the Beishar is Tamei, because it's as if the mace is already in the Achsadra, and now the other Batim are Tamei. Why is that? We're speaking about they're open. The other houses are open. So if the mace is in the Achsadra, the Tumah goes into the... Now, another important thing, guys, the Achsadra, the patio, I don't know the word patio in English, it's covered. If it's not covered, how will the Tumah go in there? You understand? But the covering, Ki'ilu connects everything. Now, the Imlav means that maybe every house has another exit directly to the street. That's the Imlav. The mace is in the bais. We only say the other Batam are Tameis because if the mace is going to go through the Achsadra, all the doors are open, so the mace is in the Achsadra, and the Achsadra goes into the Batam. But if there's a way to exit this house, not through the Achsadra, but from the other side, in the backyard, directly into the street, then Beishar Tamei, the Achsadra, guys, remains Tamei. Quite amazing. And Habayistar, the other Batim Matar, that's the meaning. Now, why is the Achsadra Tamei? That's the Bikash. The answer is because you have to understand how they built it. The Achsadra, these are the words, is considered tafel to the bias. So therefore, the bias, where the mace is a Tamei, the Achsadra is part of it. But it doesn't go into the other Batim. Now, if there is a inner room in the house that's closed, the nichnas atuma lefnim derech haloin habayis achitzon tor mipnei shatuma chizeres v'yotzes derech haloin shenichnas abai. Even though we learned before that normally we don't presume that a mace will be leaving a window if de facto the window was used to bring the mace into the house, as long as the door is closed. Even though there's a possibility to open the door and to take the mace out through the door. And what are we learning in this chapter? That if a door will be used for the mace's exit, then the other side of the door and the oil on the door on top is metame, not over here. Since the window was used, as long as the door is closed, that's key. It's once the doors are open, if someone passes away in an environment, if there's a door open from room A directly to a hallway to room B, that's part of the oil. But if the door is closed, the tumah is not there yet. The question is, if you touch the other side of the door, are you tamei? So if window is used, then we use the window as the exit. Halacha dal. Ein hakevet mitame mikol sevivav. Now, here we're speaking about a monument that's built over a corpse, not the normal caver. We're not speaking about the grave itself. There's a monument built over a corpse. Ein hakever mitame mikol sevivav. Gavaldik. So what are we learning? Let's just go back to how we began today. Guys, there's kever and there's goylol and doifik. Simple. According to the Rambam, a kever is a built structure over a grave. Goylol and doifik are not fixed, a kalim that were piled over a grave. Both of them, kever midoiraisa, goylol and doifik midarabanan, are mitame bemago uba-oil. Bemago ba-oil. So even though, okay, oil hames, I'm telling you because I'm oil hames. But if someone is buried here and there's a structure built on top of it, if it's fixed, right? So we said has a din of a caver, all of it. Which means if I touch it, or if I go under a protrusion, even though I'm far away from the mace proper, the caver itself is matamim. When do we give this halacha? Dafke, if between the corpse and everything that's built on top of it, there is at least a halal tefach. Now, normally, you know what the rule is by halal tefach? I want to go back to a building. Tumas oil, not kevin. Halal tefach, people should not get confused. I got confused in the beginning of the intro. When you have a mace in this room, and there's another story on top, are they tamei there? No. As long as you have at least a halal tefach between the mace and the roof, so mitzad echad, the oil brings tumah to anything else under the same roof, but it stops the tumah from going up. If the covering is flush on the mace, flush doesn't have to mean mamish touching, but there's less than a tefach. There is where we say that tumah boikas v'oilo bekas v'yoyret. A casket to begin with is a kalim. I don't want to go into the casket. A casket will have a din of a goylel and a doifik according to the Rambam. It's a structure that's movable, that's covering a mace. Forget about goylel, forget about kalim. So just remember. So when it comes to oil, if there is a halal tefach, the tumah does not go further. The opposite rules by a kaver. So, well, this din of a kaver, that if there's a mace inside a structure, whether it is the mace is in the ground and they build a monument on top, which is what the Rambam is speaking about, which is common. Even today in Eretz Yisrael, they bury in the ground, go to Yerushalayim, and on top of the ground, it's not like in America they make a mitzvah. They push it, they build like a box, like a rectangular box. People think the mace is in it. The mace is not in it. The mace is in the ground. That's what we're talking about. Now, even if that protruded beyond the area of the mace in Yerushalayim, they don't do that. Don't worry, they don't give up 1 inch. That is a din of a kaver. Din of a kaver means that if I touch it, I become Tumah Shiva. If I go under it, that means if it's a structure that has a little roof on the sides, if I go under it, I'm Tameh. If I go over it, not over the mace, I'm going to become Tameh. That's dafke if there is a halal tefach.
The halal tefach this way is the room tefach, right?
Is the height?
Height.
Yes.
The tefach going tefach al tefach means width and length.
That means that even if when the mace is buried,
like this is the mace, it's covering.
There is something covering, but there is one cubicle of tefach al tefach al tefach above the mace. So if we are dealing with tumas oil, this can stick out. That's the whole thing.
It has to stick out.
It doesn't have to stick. In other words, if nothing is sticking out of it, then whoever goes on top, if there's no halal tefach, is being ma'il ala mace. If there's a halal tefach, that stops the tumah from going on the other side. But if it's a kaver, then you're mile on the kaver. No, there's oil and there's kaver. Oil is mafsik the tumah from going up if there's a halal tefach. Kaver is the opposite. Since there's a halal tefach, so that's called a monument. Someone is buried and they built a structure to be mechaber. Now the tumah is in all of the structure, and it's metama b'magro b'oil. That's it. So nachol ein hakever metama mikol sevivav. Even though it's going beyond the area of the maze, is dafka achi yeshem halal tefach al tefach al tefach. And afilu higbi habingen al gabe chol tefach al v'rakia. I don't care how big the monument is. Hakol tomesh hakol kever. Wow. However, what are we excluding? What's not a din of a kever? That hoisa tumar tzutza. That means, by the way, when you bury someone in the ground, right now it's tumar tzutza. Because the caskets, they decompose very quick. I don't even think there's a halal tefach for everyone. Doesn't matter. That we don't discuss. I'm not talking about California where you have these halachas where they built these big structures, which also are considered earth. I'm talking about, anyways. In Eretz Yisrael, the way we should do, you bury a person in the earth. There's no tefach al rum tefach. It's very claustrophobic. There's earth on top of the person. There's earth on top of the body. Now, if that is built that way, and on top of it, they have this big jalab of a brick they put on top, a big thing. There's no halal tefach anywhere. That's not a kaver. Then the din will be is if you are directly over the mace, then you're mile ala mace. It's called tumah tzutza. But it doesn't affect the rest of that kaver. Then the din is tumah boikas v'oila. It pierces through boikas v'yeredis, and the ein tomei ela hanegeh keneged tumah milmayla. Oy hamayla of milmayla. Oy hanegeh keneged lamata. If that would be possible, because then the mace is on top of you. If you are underneath it. Oy ma sheheil olav milmata. This is gavaldik. So the din of a kaver that's midoirai says dafka when there is a halal tefa. Always in Eretz Yisrael today, all of these when they build top of my father, they built that. It's not one piece of marble.
But is it not Tumah Tzutza?
No, the mace is in the ground Tumah Tzutza. But then they built a structure. Inside that structure, there's more than a halal tefa. It's like a marble, and a marble on top. Stone. In there, there's nothing. If you were, God forbid, to break these things down, it's empty inside. That's called a kaver. That's mamash. In other words, and there, again, if
it's on top of the mace.
It has tumah because since it's built for the maze, the kaver itself, that's what we began today's first chapter, Perek Vav, even though stone is b'chalal not a kabel tumah. It's amazing. Stone is not a kabel tumah. Building is not makabel tuma. Doesn't matter. When it's a kaven, touching oil, and therefore, if the kaven is saying is very wide, if the kaven goes, I don't care how much beyond the place, all of that you touch a tuma shiva.
But this is not the matzeva.
This is not a matzeva, what you call in America matzeva. Correct. I would say a matzeva right now is not a din of a kaven, because the matzeva, at least I think, is on top of the mace. It's tumah tzutza. There's no halal tefach anywhere. But 1 second. But if I go over the matzeva, I'm tummy because I'm over the mace. Whether it is like here in LA where they put it flat or where they have it standing up, that's different. That's on top of the mace. Forget about the matzeva. If you go on top of the mace, you become tummy because the mace is tumah tzutza.
Either way, on top of the mace, you come in. Either way.
No. By a kaven, the mace can take up, I don't know, a foot. I don't know how wide, and they can build the structure much bigger.
Okay.
Or like we began in this chapter, if you have a bias, a building, they can build a house. If there's no way to enter and to exit the house, they made a tazakibud. The whole house has a din of a kaven. You're kidding? The mace can take up this much, and the house can be a mile.
Halal tefach makes what difference?
Halal tefach makes that called a kaven, and not a matzeva.
And it's Talmud.
Then once something has a din of a kaven, it's maga uba. Let's go back. Halacha ze klal gadol b'tumas meis. Kol davar hamitame ba'oil min hameis. Guys, hamitame, something that imparts. Whoever has the nekudis, this is a big helps. Im hayaratzutz, meaning she'ein lechalal tefach. So then, the only thing you're looking at is the mace. Where is the mace? Harei atuma bekas v'elo al rakia. And that means that if you have an airplane, we're going to get about the airplane later, because the airplane is the oil itself, but it's a moving oil. Oil zor. I take that back. We're going to focus on that. But why would it be notes? Are you oil or you're not oil? But Ketzad, for example, Kiri shal tvuam and oigal shal avonim ukazais v'nameis b'toicha. I just want to make it clear, guys. The kri and the gal shel avonim has a din of a goylel, but a goylel is a kaven like midrabanan. I know it's not fixed, but rabbinically, whatever the laws by a kaven would go here, but it won't go here. Why won't it go here? Because when you have a pile of stones on top of the mace proper, there's no halal tefach. And now the kalim b'tzad hatumam ve'ein noigim ba, they're not going to become tamei. Why? Because there's no kaven here. If and only when it's mechuven keneged atuma, whether above it or whether beneath it, that's tummy, guys. That's tummy, not because of kaven or goyel. That's tummy because of oil, because you are being mile al the mace. This is the klal gadol, guys. If there's a cube, it means if there's only kazayis when a mace. For some reason, the way the stones were piled on top, there is an opening of a tefach. Ooh, now the whole thing is a kever sasum. If you touch, the pile can be, the kazayis is this big. The pile can be as big as this room. You touch any part of it, that's the din. Now again, if it's not fixed, just to know, it has a din of a midraban. If it's fixed, it has a din of a kever that I see. It's not differentiating. It's the same nekuda.
Is it still because
whenever there's tumah tzutza, we don't have the din of a kever. Don't have a din of a kever. Beautiful. Halacha bias shemiloi oifer otzorayis. Now you have a bias and the mason there, and they packed it in. Right now, what did they do? They took away the halal tefach. Now, how is it a bias? Well, when there is a bias, what did we learn in this chapter? If there's no exits, the whole bias is coming. Even if there's doors, but if they're all locked, you don't know through which one the mace is going. If you go on the outside of any door, you're tummy if you touch it, or if you're a mile under it. But the moment you filled up the house, it's not a din of a cave-in. That's it. And if tumah is buried in the ground, which is how we do it today, And therefore, guys, Gavaldik, Ashreinu, to get this clear. And the final halach of this chapter, halach Zayin, so Tumah is in the wall. Now that we established, guys, that when it's Tumah Tzutza, there's no sides. The Rambam writes like this: there's no sides by Mago. Imagine there's a wall and someone is buried in the wall. Someone now is using this wall to be a wall of a sukkah. And there is a covering on the others on the sukkah. Even though the context is only menatzad, then we just said whenever there's tumah tzutz, it's not the tami menatzad. It's only if there's oil. Here you'll be tami, because there's an oil on the other side. Hasukkah temeya shaharei nasa hakoisel mitzad sidei ha'oil. Didn't we just say that sedodim are tohoidim? That's only for touch. Linigeya ilu lohoya aleim oil. Avol mishinas aleim oil. Oil kolon tamei. Sharei atuma betoichoi. Gavaldik. Chevra peidik ches. Yes, you gotta get moving. Yeah.
Right, length is height. Does that stop it from going all the way up?
That makes it like this. That if there's a structure around it, it makes that structure a source of tumah. And now, if you go over any part of the cave, you're also going to become tummy. It makes it worse. A cave extends the tumah a lot. Was if there would not been a din of a kaver, taka tumah kasva oila, but only on top of where the person is buried. If you have this house, dafke because there's a halal tefach.
So in both cases they can go up, but in
sure,
the tefach by tefach makes it go out.
First of all, it goes without sudadim, and also it's not only going above the mace; it's going above the kaver. It substantially adds to tumah a kaver. Okay, chaver peirik ches is the Beis HaPras. Now, we introduced already, really, sometimes when we learned the Gemara, maybe it was Rashi, there's two types of Beis HaPras. The Rambam doesn't word it that way. Beis HaPras is an area, according to the Rambam, where someone was buried, and we know that this area was plowed over. We're speaking about when the depth of the burial and the depth of the plow are aligned. Since it was plowed, the plow tragically broke the body to pieces. Hold on, you don't have enough of the body left to be matama ba'oil, as we learned earlier on, but etzem kisoida is matama b'mago, ubamasa. So maybe there's a little piece of bone on the ground, and when you walk in it, maybe you moved it. We don't know, midrabanan your tummy. That's Beis HaPras. Now the Rambam is going to speak about something that's very similar. Better and worse, but not the same. That is, there is an area where we knew someone was buried. We lost the location. Now, the issue here is that if you actually walked over that area, you became tummy because of oil. Kever shenechrash cannot be matama ba'oil. There's not enough of it to be matama ba'oil. Soda, did I say kever? Kever, not kever. Yeah, kever. But if it was shenevda ba'kever, you lost. You don't know where it is. It's similar to the din of the Beis HaPras. That's how we're going to start these dinim. We're also going to learn the following: that if a place was rightfully designated for a mace, it's called kana mekaymai, and in many times that area becomes asur b'hana because it was designated for the mace. There'll be times that someone is buried in a location without reshus. Then we'll learn once the mace was removed, not only did the tumah go away, you can have hana from that location. And therefore, we're going to go into the whole din of a mace mitzvah, because we'll see that mace mitzvah, kana mekaymai, with all of the pratim. Perek Shmini is today's largest chapter. We got to get moving quicker. Have 11 halachas, but God willing, finish it, beginning with halacha. So like this. Soda she'avad kever b'toich, not nechrash. Avad means that it's intact. You just don't know where it is. So the Chachamim said that afara metama b'mago b'maso. We're speaking about someone who took the earth. You took the earth from it. You move it to another place. You know that when I was a kid, they used to bring from Israel these little things of earth that they probably made in China. The colors, the earth from Israel. That offer is tummy. but it's a rabbinic tumah because there's no mace in here. But since it came from a location where maybe there was a mace, it remains tamei, and it's matame metuva shiva, but the midrabanan. Shema nidash. Oh no. Maybe the cave that was crushed. Maybe, even though nothing was plowed there, just like the Rambam. And maybe the arbons kesoide b'teichafara. V'chol hasada kula hamayol nitma. I want to explain something. People ask, why do I need a Rabbanan? We have Safik Tuma B'Rishus Harabim is Tamei. Yeah, but some fake Tuma B'Rishus Hayachid is Tamei. Correct. But Safik Tuma B'Rishus Harabim is Tar. And the din of Rishus Harabim means a place where there's more than two people. There's three people. And we, the Moisach Chama, have the right to walk through everyone's fields. The limitations is only the Moisach Shamin. So the din is that even the Moisach Chama, even when this area has a din of a Rishus Harabim, without this new din of the Rabbanan, it would have been tar. You have a suffix Tuma, Rishus Harabim Sfeik tar. The Chachamim says that a Sada Sha'avad Ba'keven is Tamei. Now, furthermore, if you build any structure, so what do we say? Maybe the structure is over the cave. So if you are in under any other area of the nitma, kol mash oil, it becomes tamei. Shema oil, shema oisa sada like cave. Boom, it's on the top of the grave. Halacha two. Now, what happens if you build in this field a two-story building? Here will be the key, guys. As we learned in the previous chapter, that if you have a closed room, right, not a cave, a mace is in there. It's not a monument built. So like today, a person passes away in the hospital. People on the second story are not coming because if there's no opening. So there's a big difference between if the second story protrudes more, then we say maybe the second story, that protrusion is over the caver, or if the house is the way today you make a two-story building. There's nothing of the top floor that's going beyond the bottom floor. That means pischa doesn't mean doors. It means that there is no part of the second story that is going beyond, you understand, the limits of the bottom story. So then the aliyah start. Even if they build this house over the caver, so what? Like Ma'aras HaMachpelah. Even if the Ma'aras HaMachpelah would have been built over the makim of the Kvura, so what? Even those, just to know, it's not only the others that are there. You have other people that are buried there. Yeah, the whole first story is one big cemetery. It's not matami upstairs.
All these cemeteries in Europe that they built over and all these things. So that's fine.
The building that's on the ground is not fine. That's the whole thing of Tumas Eretz Ha'amim is exactly the Gush Eretz Ha'amim is because they build on top of Kavana.
Yeah, but usually there's a foundation, and the foundation probably is considered the first floor. So
No, it's not. It's a
hollow space.
It doesn't matter. Hey, let's go weiter. Still aliyah toira because shareyu oil al gaba oil. That's called oil al gaba oil, not oil al gaba foundations. Oil al gaba oil. You think about it. The foundation was not made to be an oil. The foundation was made. I'll give you a mashal. How come you open up a table on Shabbos? I know me in le'in, but that's the same words. Oil arei Shabbos is also midrabanan. How can you open up a table? I know it's arei or a folding chair because the table and the chair were meant for you to use the top of it, even though they are a type of oil, but they were not meant.
Oil's on the bottom.
That's why I'm going to a foundation was not made. A building was built with the oil, right? Commercial is what now the loyim mechuven in the direction, not that the top story is narrower, no, the opposite. Like today, all of the buildings, the old buildings on Pico Robertson over here. In other words, like sometimes they park underneath it. You have these pillars. In other words, the top story is bigger. So then afaliyah tameya shema skufas aliyah ala kever. Pare aliyah aliyah ala kever. Okay, goodbye. Halacha gimel. Now this field mutalas re'ebuteicha kol zera. You are allowed to plant in there. Why? Lefisha ein shar sheis re'magim ad lakaver. Now, guys, when you're going to plant, you'll become tummy. We're speaking now whether you can have hana from the offer. You are asun midoy raisa to have hana from the mace. Here, any type of plantations that doesn't go as deep as wherever the mace will be. So even if you plant it on top of the mace, the guy that planted will become tummy. but the plant itself will not become tummy. When it's mechuber lekarka, it won't become tummy. And when it comes to food, even if you cut it off and it was on top of the mace, if it wasn't yet muksher, it won't become tummy. We're not focusing on that. We're focusing on, you can have hana for zerayim, but not to plant trees, because trees go much deeper. The same fear. And therefore, you're getting nourishment from the makrim hameis, guys, that's also midorais. Now, it's a suffix. You don't know. So that suffix is midraban. Hateluli yois. Teluli yois are little mounds. Now, tragically, women at times miscarry. And they, like we mentioned a few days ago, you have to bury it if it's 41 days or more. So there's a klal that the mounds that are near a city and near a cemetery would be the go-to location for women to bury their fetuses. Hatiluliyos, hakroibois leir that are smuchal beis hakvaris, or lederech beis hakvaris. Echad achadoshes, as we'll define in a moment. The echad ayishanos, we'll define that in a moment. So we have a cheskas tuma. Mipnei shanoshim koivre shomes nesan fallen, and also mukeshchin that lose their limbs. And we learned chavre in the beginning. Aver min hachai at times is matamak make shalem. Where do they bury their limbs? And they're matama ba'oil. At the point is, if you go over it, No, they buried it in, you're not touching it. If you go over that area, now, did you go over the fetus? It's like a sadash of a bakeva. It's included in that derabana. If they're far away from the city, so if they are new mounds, as we'll define in a moment. Now, guys, what's rechoikos? Women would bury their fetuses alone. And the women walk far from the city, there was a fear. So that's what. So if it's chadasha, to hoidois, but if it's ayishana, to meyois. Even though we presume halachically that women will not walk to bury the fetuses far away, but it's far away now. Maybe many years ago it was nearer. Where's the city? The city is destroyed. Or maybe there was a road there. Now what's called karaiv? That's what karav means. It's not about how many feet. Women would go outside the city and bury it in the closest mount. The Yashan means that no one remembers that whether there was a cemetery there or not. That's the meaning of Yashan. Halachadam. Stay boichen is that after or prior to a burial, there would be a place near a cemetery that would be open. Many times it was private property, but people would gather there and cry for the mace. And they called those places stay boichen. Stay boichen. Even though afar tahar, why? Never, when it comes to the miscarriage, we don't say people buried mason over there or fetuses over there. However, there's another halacha regarding a sedei boichen. You're not allowed to plant trees. You're not allowed to plant, zriya, seeds, legumes, wheat, v'chulei. Why? Shaloi lahargel regel adam l'sham. We don't want people to go there. Shema yesham tumah. In other words, there's enough of a chashash. You don't become tummy. We just don't want people hanging out there. And kfar nisyu ashu b'avimenu. Stay belong to people. But when you have a property that's near a cemetery and people are always going there to making eulogies and crying, so there's a certain amount of so there's not a chashash that if you go there, you're tamim midrabanan. It's not as much as the tail. It's not like a sadash of a kaven. But Chachamim said at least don't use these fields for planting zerayim or netiyas. Now, v'oisin, but you could use ma'afan makom zetanayim like kodesh, because again, sharei leyuchseku sham tuma. So this not planting is like a very far-fetched gezeder. Halacha 5. Kever hanimtzo. This is a big din. Someone told me that if people that put a swimming pool on their house, did you find a body? What happens if you own property and you find a cave? Someone was buried there without your consent. So again, the question will be this idea that if the burial was done with a shuz, so there's a certain kinyan that the mace has in that location. Aleph, you cannot move it. And Beis, that area becomes asur ba'no. If someone is buried without your permission, as we'll see, if it's going to be loy kana mekaymai, aleph, you can move the mace, and number two, the offer is mutter bano. That will be what we'll learn now. Mutter lefanoisa. The impino, we say mekaymai tamei. Now, what's mekaymai tamei? Not because afara tamei. First of all, there's two things over here. The way the Noise Kalim learn in this Rambam. If you find one mace, you can remove the mace and you're good. This liner is that if you found three or more, if it was done without your reshus, you can move them. But now you have to be chayish, maybe other people are buried here. And until you make a bedika, you have to presume that's the meaning of Mekayim Eitam. Which meaning, not because afara asur. No, because maybe it's now the other people are buried. Now the kever how you do you know that there's a grave buried there. Asur lefanoisei. Because if it's known, we presume they got permission, even though it was not on the Beis HaChaim. Everyone knows someone is buried there. You can't move the grave. But even there, it's karkas not tummy. Halacha vav kever shu mazik l'rabim. The word mazik doesn't only have to mean financially, physically. It can mean that if there's a place where kahanim want to remain betara, and they have a road now, and if you walk here, you'll become tummy. So the din is mefana noisei. However, since now it's another din. Since that person was buried with reshus, not you found three graves. Here, was any person that was buried with reshus, even if the Tzorech Rabim allows you to move it, doesn't matter where. You will see some. There's sometimes reshus to bury in reshus Rabim if the person is a meis mitzvah. That's how we get into that. So once someone is buried with reshus, then I know that karka is not tummy, but you can't have a no. Allah Chazai. Now, a point of a meis mitzvah means that if you find a mace whose relatives you don't know, because you don't know the mace or you don't know whether the mace had relatives, and therefore, if you won't be the one burying that person, no one will. There's a big mitzvah for you to be misasik in its burial. So now there's another detail. How much out of pocket do I have to go? So I think it was one of the 10 takanas of Yeshua, meis mitzvah kana mekaymai. But you don't want to be mazik l'rabim. So now we're going to get into that. So if it's already b'teichat chum, so it's not disrespectful for you to make a little bit of an effort to walk within the 2,000 amas and bring him to a beis hakvaras. Do that. But if you find a meis mitzvah out there, so on one hand you're chayiv in a good way. You have a mitzvah to bury, but you don't have to go. So the din is matzai tofel afilu. Even if you found the mace in a karkoim, karkoim is saffron, which is extremely expensive. And using up that place in the field where they plant karkoim is a big loss to the Baal Hasada. Azoyidas. Kana mekaymai. B'reshus. If you cover and let's go to what we learned before. Now, if the Baal Hasada is going to come and he's going to say, you know what, I'm going to buy him a place in Sinai. I'll pay the $40,000. Since whenever someone was buried b'reshus, kana mekaymai, and that place is asur bano. Won't help to move. He won't benefit anything. He'll benefit for Tuma. He won't benefit. He can't use that area. Now, if you found someone on a boundary, so then you can move it to the side because people would walk on the boundary. People would walk on the boundary, and everyone will become tummy. So you minimize. Now, what happens if there is a meitzah separating two types of fields? So you're not going to bury him on the boundary that people walk on. Which side should you pick? They can belong to two different people. Everyone is saying burying on the other side. So you go onto the field where burying there will be less financially problematic. Even though for me, even less financially problematic is a problem. For me, it's better to be buried by you, but you have to judge it objectively. Stay near a field that's Bechlal left fallow. Stay near our fields that they didn't plant they planted only every second. A fallow field is never used. So then, if you find them on the meitzah, you have to move it to which side? Stay bur. If it's between a nir and a stay zera, the field that you plant every single year, it's a bigger loss to take away a place that's used every single year. So you plant them and stay near. You get it? Between zera and kerem, what has less value? Zera. Stay elon, stay kerem. Here the halacha says, plant that bury the person. Stay kerem. Why? Not because stay kedem is less valuable, because when you plant a kaven under a tree, so then there's another issue that anyone that walks under any part of that tree is going to become tummy because of oil. Since the karamim are very low, it doesn't extend. Whoever saw vineyards, no, they make trellises, but it doesn't go outwards, so it does less damage objectively. So therefore, plant him, stay kedem, bnei latuma. Then who determines? The one who's doing the mitzvah. You don't plant a person on the mitzvah because people walk on the mitzvah. You pick any field. When you find a grave, you never knew there was a grave. So first of all, even if he only knew that 20 years ago, so now you would argue, well, if he knew 20 years ago, so I'm going to make it lemafreya 19 years, 0.99. No. The moment you don't go back to forever, you only go mikano lahabu. If someone knew that there was not a grave for 20 years ago. If no one knew anything, it's matama forever. Like the big chiddush, if someone says, I know that 20 years ago there wasn't a grave, so you can say, let it go lemafreya for 19 years. The moment you can't go forever, then you only go mikano lahabu. Halacha 9. So there's an obligation for you, let's say in all to make it siyun. And even though on Cholamayit, aside of the 5 hetadim, it's the days of moyed, but this is such a big obligation. Dafka, Rabbi Banohu did it, Tarizal did it, certain tzaddikim. Yeah. Because people had more time on Chalaway. The answer is that kazais basar, once it decomposes, even the mashu is not a kazais. So when you're doing it tziyun, even though these limes markers that didn't last forever, they needed to be redone, but it's going to outlast too much the kazais vidiyuk. So people will remember, I found the kazais, and in a couple of days it's decomposed already a little bit. What is used? Sid, wine. With more details in a moment. Now, you don't make that marker exactly over the body. You know why? Because today, like in many bati, even here where you don't have the matzeva standing, you have a stone. The stone is going above the ground a little bit. We're speaking about a shmirach of lime. That means it's not going above the ground at all. You only see it basically when you are on it. If you're going to make it exactly on it without going it beyond it, you might notice it too late. On the other hand, you can't make it go too much beyond it because you're making more of the Holy Land Tameh. So you go a little bit beyond it. A little bit from both sides, from all 4 sides. Hafsid means if you're going to do it on top, people will realize too late. Now, I'll be a big trumiyak. I'll make it a foot away. Don't do that either. Now, you don't need to do that because everyone knows. The whole idea of tziyun is elas feikois. Like Sadash Avad Bakever Hasachachois Haparois, we're going to learn about that later, that if you have certain walls surrounding a Beis HaChaim, it's possible, let's go back to the fetuses, or today it costs $30,000. Not everyone has that money. People are going to bury right by the wall. And therefore what? And therefore, if you have stones protruding from the wall or trees, could be that stone is going a little bit over someone who was buried, and don't stand under it. So whenever you have these chashashes, that is what should be painted with lime. But if everyone knows there's a cave there, there's no need to do it. Halacha Yud, matzah sada mitzuyenes, if you find such a marked field, but you don't know mativa. Now, we began the intro to this chapter that there's a beis hapras, shenecharash ba'keven. It's also midarabanan, but there's no tumas oil. There's another type of what we learned in this chapter, she'avad ba'keven. There it's worse, because here, since it was not plowed, midarabanan, they'll become tamei b'tumas oil. So if you don't know which one it is, so im yesh ba'ilanois, then we presume it's the type she'avad ba'keven. You know why? People cannot plow properly where there's trees. Because yesh ba'ilan is biduash. I'm sorry. If there are no trees, then biduash ava ba'kevan. Yesh ba'ilan noise. Why? What's the logic? The Rambam says we'll explain that later. It's escaping me the logic. If you find one stone, that's the pshat. Now, did they paint on stones? No, they painted on the ground. If you find one stone, then that's pshat, then underneath your stomach. If you have two stones, what are we saying? When people build, one of the things you use in building is that you smear the walls with lime. If you have two stones, im yeshid beinayim on the ground, that's taka for a cave. But if there's no sid beinayim, there's only sit on top of the stones. So yes, im yesh cheres beinayim, if there's little shards on the ground in between it, which is how guys used to build, then you say the whole thing is for building. But if there's no cheres beinayim and you have two stones and none of it is on the ground, then we say, yeah, that even though normally you paint it on the ground, here under the stones there's tuma. If you have one boundary, that's a big shiloh. So when it's painted on top, see, even though we learned before that when you find a mace mitzvah, you don't bury it in the meitzah. But if someone painted the meitzah, then you say they meant that under the meitzah there's a mace, and the side fields are good. And even guys, even if you have a field that has, these mitzarim, by the way, they were not fences. They would make a mound of earth to separate one field from the other. Even if it's on all three from the four, you don't say that the guy was trying to say that the field is problematic. No, if they only painted 3 out of the 4, it means that there are people buried in the mitzarim. But matzah, arbas, mitzorah, mitzayanim, that is already an indication that the field within it is tamei and the mitzarim are not. So the mitzorah are tohidim v'chalasad kullu tamei. One second. Why would they paint the metzed if the tumah is not on the metzed? We learned that before. Because really, you have to go a little bit beyond. And only a little bit beyond. So it makes sense that they painted the mound for people far away to know that field is a problematic field. That's going to be continued.